Okay, so this one's gonna be quite a long video. So if you don't need to watch all A, B, C, and D, obviously skip ahead. A and B are kind of the more complicated ones. But make sure you see that you have to use at least two different methods between these four problems. So we have factoring, and that includes reverse box and slide and divide. We have completing the square, and we have quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is normally the easiest one to do for the ones that have complicated numbers. So like C and D, because there's an A value of 1, factoring would be easy, slide and divide would be easy. But the other two, it may not be as easy to do. So quadratic formula is always the safest. So I'm going to do, for A, I'm going to do quadratic formula. So in order to do that, I'm going to make sure that it equals 0. So I need to subtract 3 from both sides. So I get 4x squared plus 4x minus 3 equals 0. Because this is a square root, you could also do a completing the square. You could also do reverse box. You could also do slide and divide. If you did slide and divide, you would get negative 12 in the bottom and 4 on the top. And you're looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to 4. Those two numbers would be 6 and negative 2, because 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. 6 plus negative 2 is 4. And then don't forget, once you do that, you need to divide by 4. So that's our A value, divide both of them by 4. 6 divided by 4 can be reduced to 3/2. Negative 2 divided by 4 can be reduced to 1/2. And then we could just skip right to our answers, because remember, we take the opposite of this. So if we got 3/2 off of slide and divide, our answers would be x equals negative 3/2 and x equals 1/2 if you did slide and divide. You could also do, like I said, the reverse box. You would have 4x squared here and negative 3 here, and these two need to add up to 4x. If you do it that way, you would need a 2x here, a 2x here, a negative 1 and a 3. That would give you 2x times 3 would give you 6x, 2x times negative 1 would give you negative 2x, and that adds up to 4. So you would get 2x minus 1 and 2x plus 3 equals 0. And then you would set each of these equal to 0 and solve. You solve by adding 1, so you get 2x equals 1, and then divide by 2, so you get x equals 1/2. This one, you would set this equal to 0. The first step would be to subtract 3, so you get 2x equals negative 3. Then divide by 2, and you would get x equals negative 3/2. So again, the same two answers that you got. Or for the fourth method, you could do the quadratic formula, A, B, and C. A would be 4, B would be 4, C would be negative 3, because we have to take it after this. And then you'd fill in the quadratic formula. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 16. 16, there we go, minus 4 times our A value times our C value, all over 2 times our A value, 2 times 4. Right, so then we would evaluate the square root. When I evaluate the square root, this is 16 minus 4 times negative 3. I get 64. 2 times 4 is 8. The square root of 64 is 8. So this is negative 4 plus or minus 8 divided by 8. So I need to do negative 4 plus 8. That would give me 4 divided by 8 can be reduced to 1/2. And then I would do negative 4 minus 8. When I do that, negative 4 minus 8 is negative 12. And then I divide that by 8. And that will give me negative 3/2. So all three ways I get the same answer, 1/2 and negative 3/2. You only have to do it one way. That was just me showing you all the different ways to do that one. All right, this one over here, you do have that 25x squared, so you could do completing the square, but remember it's a little more complicated because you need to make sure that you include that 5x inside the parentheses when you do it. So most of you haven't been doing that very well, so I'm going to skip that method. So you could do factoring, you could do reverse box, you could do slide and divide. 25 times 8 is 200, so that's kind of a big number to look for slide and divide. So I'm just going to do this one with quadratic formula. Anything with a big number, you can just save yourself some time by just saying, I'll just do quadratic formula and get right to the answer. So remember, it's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2a. So I'm just plugging in the numbers. So b is negative 30 and it says negative b, so that's going to make it a positive 30. a positive 30 plus or minus the square root. Negative 30 squared is 900. So this is the 900 minus 4 times my A value, which is 25, times my C value, which is 8. And then I'm going to put this in the calculator. Oh, all over, sorry, 2, don't forget that. That's a big mistake some of you make. Then I'm going to put this in my calculator, 900 minus 4 times 25 times 8. That will give me 100, so 30 plus or minus the square root of 100, all divided by 50. The square root of 100 is 10, so 30 plus or minus 10 divided by 50. So now I need to do 30 plus 10, which would give me 40 divided by 50, would give me 4/5. So that's one of my answers. And then I'm going to do 30 minus 10, which will give me 20. 20 divided by 50 will reduce to 2/5. So that's my other answer. So 2/5 and 4/5. If you do any other method, that's fine. Just make sure you get 4/5 and 2/5 as your answer. And then we'll go down to C and D. All right, so going down to C and D are much easier because they both have A values of 1. So really, it's the one that you're most comfortable with. You could do reverse box, you could do completing the square, you could do slide and divide, you could do quadratic formula. All of them would work pretty easily to do it this way because we have that A value of 1. So for this one, I'm going to do factoring. So I'm going to set this equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 3 to both sides. So I have x squared plus 8x plus 12 equals 0. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 12. I said that at the wrong time. Multiply to 12 and add to 8. So remember, you have those little factoring sheets. So 12, we could do 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. So 2 times 6 would add to 8. So it's going to be x plus 2 and x plus 6 equals 0. And then I'm going to set each one of them equal to 0. So x plus 2 equals 0. That means that my solution for that one is -2 because I would subtract 2 from both sides. So x equals -2. And then I would also subtract 6 from both sides for the second one. And that means my answer would be x equals -6. So x equals -2 and x equals -6. You could do slide and divide if you want. It's just 1 times 15, so it works out to be the same thing. You could do the reverse box. You could do quadratic formula. It's going to take a little bit more time, but you still will get the right answers of -2 and -6. So then this over here, we're going to work on D. And again, this one had the A value of 1. So really it's whatever you're most comfortable with. Factoring, reverse box, slide and divide, completing the square, quadratic formula, all of them work. Just make sure that these 4 problems, you use at least 2 methods. So don't just do all quadratic formula. You need to do one other one. So this one, I'm again going to do factoring. So I'm going to subtract 14 because I need it to equal 0. So that would be x squared plus 20x plus 36 equals 0. So I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to 36 and add to 20. I can look at my little factoring table over here and I have 36. I would have 1 and 36, 2 and 18. Right there, I can see that those 2 would be the ones that would add to 20. So it would be x plus 2 and x plus 18. That equals 0. So then I set each of them equal to 0. X plus 2 equals 0. X plus 18 equals 0. And then I solve, so I would get x equals -2 and x equals -18. All right, and my light just turned out. But that's how you do it. Make sure again that you use at least 2 different methods for those 4 different problems because you will have to do that on your test.